Okay, we are live. Good morning, everybody. I'm on the West Coast right now, so I just woke up a few hours ago. But we are here, we're live. It's very hot here in LA. It's going to be in the 90s. I don't know where all of our viewers are, but hopefully it's not as hot as here because yesterday it was very, very hot. Well, I think we'll get started with the show. And yeah, I'm in the living room, so you may see some dogs running around, and I'll try to keep the noise level down, but they're a little crazy this morning. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. You're watching Stand Up Fight Back, where we discuss strategy and analysis for the progressive movement. I'm your co-host, Margot Pius. I am a scientist, an engineer, and occasional journalist. And over here, that's our other co-host, Carlos Marroquin. He is the amazing, irreplaceable grassroots organizer. And right above Carlos is our other special co-host for the day is Michelle Manos. She is also a wonderful organizer from the LA area and who's very involved with so many things, including labor unions and I don't know. You do so many things, Michelle. I just know right now you're going to be talking about labor unions, but yeah, why don't you just introduce yourself again to the audience? We haven't had you on in a while, and just kind of remind everyone a little bit about your background.
Okay, your volume is out.
You're muted. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to take that from 2020 right into 2021. You're on mute. Thank you. Yeah, I'm involved in a lot of different things. I'm excited to be on again to talk to you about some of the stuff that's been going on in Los Angeles lately. I'm a community organizer and I'm a writer and I'm an event planner. I love to use my skills and experience to help the progressive movement however I can. And I won't bore you with my whole bio or activist resume. One of the cool recent things I can tell you about is I recently founded an organization called Community Solidarity Project. We are an amazing team of logistics experts that like to help other groups with their big projects. And we do hashtag solidarity projects. That's something fun that we've been working on lately. Yeah.
That's awesome, Michelle. Carlos, anything else you would like to add to Michelle's introduction?
Well, there's a lot that I can add to that. As you say, we could spend a whole hour here talking about Michelle. But, just glad that she's with us this morning and be able to cover some of the very important issues that is affecting not only people here in the city of Los Angeles, but throughout. We're going to have a very cool show today because we're going to talk about those very important things that you have been following and that you concerned about. But I am here in beautiful Hollywood, California, my hometown. It's sunny out there. Welcome, everybody, wherever you may be watching us from. Glad to be here today.
Great. So why don't I kind of make us a little bit more equal here? Let's see if that works. Okay, so yeah, why don't we get started? We have a lot on our agenda today. I think we're going to go ahead and start with some news, some national news. And it looks like our favorite Joe Manchin is at it again, teaming up with Cinema, whose first name slips my mind, but I don't really care because I really don't like either of them. But let's get started. So first of all, Bernie decided to play a little game of chess with the House progressives, and he put out the call saying, hold the line. We are not going to let these idiots get away with this. We are not going to let them decouple the infrastructure legislation from the reconciliation bill, which is a 3.5 trillion. Basically, I would call it the very, very delayed bailout for Main Street. So Bernie Sanders, he came out, he said, we'll just tank this. We're going to do this. We're going to stop this because the American people need this $3.5 trillion legislation to come through, because not only Let's pass it through. No, that's the one. Let's go over here, because not only is it good for people, like for families, not only does it expand Medicaid expansion that was not covered in some of the red states. It also expands Medicare by providing dental and vision. It also provides paid leave, which we've never had. It also has some things in there related to climate change, investments in infrastructure. I mean, this is such a long time coming, and it's not even enough, this legislation, but it's something. And the fact that they don't even want that, I mean, is just an abomination. But of course, Manchin refuses. And one thing to know about Senator Joe Manchin is that he was in support of bank bailouts after the financial crisis. He's complaining that he's not going to support this socialist agenda, but he sure had no problem supporting a socialist agenda for banks. And when the TARP legislation passed during that time, the banks used that money to give themselves, to give their CEO bonuses. So Joe Manchin had no problem by putting the banks on the dole so that they could pay themselves a little bit more. Not only that, and this is all to say thank you to David Sirota, former member of the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign and journalist, that Manchin also is tied to a coal company in his home state. And he's, of course, opposed to anything that would do anything to destroy his investment there. And so he's probably opposed to any of the climate change parts of this legislation, because he wants to get rich off of coal and get rich off of killing the rest of us. Because, I don't know, this guy's got to be in his 60s at minimum. Maybe he's in his 70s. He figures he'll be fine. He can be rich for a little bit longer, and the rest of us, screw us. So this guy is a real jerk. So this is the person who is holding up legislation that would benefit everybody else. But thanks to the progressive movement, here's Pramila Jayapal right here. Thanks to them holding the line for the American people and also fighting back against the centrists in the party, who were led by Representative Josh Gottheimer, we're able to have a fighting chance to get that $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill passed. So this is just a reminder that the setup of Congress isn't just, Republicans versus Democrats, because the Republicans are actually like extreme right-wing conservatives. And then everybody else is sort of in the Democratic Party. So you have like right-wing conservatives who are, less extreme within the Democratic Party. Then you have like, the centrist, and they're all sort of both corporate Democrats anyway. And then you have the progressive movement, who are really more like the center left when you look at it in terms of like global politics or even on the European political scale. So all of the internal fighting is really within the Democratic Party. So we have this coalition of representatives in the House who have been trying to force a decoupling of the legislation, led by Josh Gottheimer. But because of the strength of the progressive caucus and the progressive movement gaining seats in the House in particular, we've been able to fight back and push back against them and completely destroy Representative Josh Gottheimer's attempts and his crew's attempts to destroy this much needed legislation. And one other thing to point out is that Gottheimer and his other fellow coalition members are backed by a super PAC, or it's called No Labels, and it's it's dark money, and nobody knows who's funding them, but it's pretty obvious that they're being funded by people by corporations who are opposed to raising taxes, who are opposed to reining in the corporations, who are opposed to climate change. So that's a big battle that's going on here. And the other thing is that the progressives are literally fighting so many people right now because there's also these other groups that are opposed to this legislation because they're opposed to anything that would do anything good for the climate, it seems. And these organizations are also backed by big corporations like Apple, which is, and Disney, who, they come out in public and they say, we support taking action on climate change. We're reducing our carbon footprint. But in behind the scenes, they're trying to take down this bill. So that's what's been going on this week on the Capitol. There's this big battle, but thankfully, because of Bernie Sanders' two campaigns in 2016 and 2020, we've been able to make strides in the House by getting more politicians who are like-minded, more progressives. Nobody is perfect, but here we have an opportunity to fight back and do something good for the American people. So Carlos and Michelle, I applaud them for taking a stand when they saw that this was at risk of collapsing and this legislation was at risk of being dismantled. And Bernie did what he needed to do, and he called them out, and he's playing a little bit of chess here. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Well, let's make this clear. Let's make this clear that Manchin is not a Democrat. He's a Democrat in name only. The fact of the matter is that he represents some of the most red districts in the nation. So this is why he ran as a Democrat. But the reality is that he's going to be representing his district at the best interest of that district, which are Republicans. That's the danger of the Democratic Party. They rely too much on centrists. They rely too much on moderates. And that's problematic for the Biden administration. That was the problem that happened also with the Obama administration when he first started. Let's be clear. Obama wanted to do a lot of things, and it was the same moderates, the same centrists that prevented him from advancing any kind of agenda that benefited the general public. It's a repeat. So the question to ask is, will Manchin eventually give up, or will he be the one person that blocks progress for the country?
Well, let's hope not. Michelle, you want to chime in on this topic?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as someone who really became a full-time community organizer in 2015 to support Bernie Sanders, this is part of why, right? And this is why we call him the Amendment King. This is, even though it's not an amendment, it's like the same principle that, it's not always about the full bill and getting the full load of what we're asking for. Sometimes we have to, I'm not an incrementalist. I think that we do what we can, like week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, and year to year to affect change today. We have people who don't have their health care today. We have people going to sleep on the street tonight. These are problems we have to solve in the immediate. But again, like, this is why we say this system doesn't work. The two-party system doesn't work, or our version of democracy has been co-opted by capitalism, because we have to celebrate even these smallest actions by our allies in Congress, because it's kind of like these are the only tools that they have in a system that is effective for what we are trying to do, which is fight for justice for everyone. But as much as I think that we need an entirely different system, and I'm an anti-capitalist, the reason that we fight for incrementalism is because people are suffering, families are suffering right now today, and around the world we have a climate responsibility, because we the West, the quote unquote developed nations, have been driving so much of climate change that is going to, and has already begun to, negatively and disproportionately impact poorer nations, coastal nations, nations that don't have the infrastructure to withstand the storms even as much as we think we do. So, we have a moral obligation to get this right. And, I don't always agree with Senator Bernie Sanders, but I applaud every single effort he makes in order to get us a little closer to being able to be on the path to justice. I know that's what he's always fighting for, even if we disagree in tactics sometimes.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. And I think none of us here would say that we're for incrementalism. I think if we were, we would not do this show, and Carlos wouldn't work as hard as he does to fight for things now. But we do live in this system, and so we have to play both sides. We have to play within the system, and we have to play from outside the system to be able to make those changes happen. And sometimes we get them faster than others, but it's a long process. And 2 points that I want to make before I let Carlos come back in to this conversation. One is that what I am seeing here is very hopeful, because we have not had such a strong progressive voice in Congress like we do now. And to see this moment happen, I think, is very significant. A lot of people have criticized members of the squad and so on, and Bernie, for not, taking a stand. And we can, that's a whole other argument, but that we could have about that. But in this moment, when they saw that the situation was really, that this reconciliation bill was really at risk, they did do it. So we have to applaud them when they do. And I think the more people we have in Congress who are like-minded, who were inspired by Bernie, who are on the same political spectrum of ideas in Congress, the more we have of them, maybe there is a chance in the future, thinking, decades ahead. So we have to keep pushing in that regard. My second point is that a lot of times I hear arguments about Manchin in defending having Manchin there, saying that, if we don't keep Manchin in the Democratic Party, a Republican is going to take that seat. But to me, that argument is a very narrow.
It seems like a Republican already has, right? So
I'm sorry?
It seems like a Republican already has.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
right. They work for them in that case.
Yeah. So for the most part, he is. Some people and I say some people because I can think of one person who I've had this argument with will say, well, Manchin has voted in other ways with the Democratic Party opposed. Okay, whatever. But here's the key. If you're only focused on West Virginia at that seat, and you're saying we can't lose that seat, then yeah, you're right. But there's all sorts of other seats. So why not just trade for an even replacement? Get rid of him, find a vulnerable Republican someplace else, and take him out and put a new Democrat there. That's the kind of strategy that the Democratic Party should be playing, instead of making excuses about why they need Manchin. Find someplace else, and there has got to be a vulnerable senator someplace else. So that's my political strategy for the Democratic Party today, is find someplace else.
Your strategy would be effective if the goal of the Democrats was, to be the party of the working class and to be, but that's not what's happening. And that's, for me, like, that's what I learned from Obama, right? Like, Obama was the first first candidate for president that I ever phone banked for, that I ever actually showed up for, besides just donating. And voting for Obama was my first presidential election in California as a California resident in 2008. And, the first thing he did was take the public option off the table. And he spent his entire career as president, his entire presidency. I don't agree that Bernie Sanders was a sheepdog, but I a little bit agree that Obama was. I do, because he, in my mind, like, he never had the intentions that he said he did. It was like the ideals of young Obama, and he was willing to say them because they still felt true in his heart. But by the time he was running for president, he was of and by the system. He was already entrenched. He was already in the conversations of the back rooms, right? Like the difference between Obama and Bernie Sanders is that Bernie Sanders doesn't have those backroom conversations where he sells us down the line for like one political win here and there. If they try to draw Bernie Sanders into those conversations, he'll just go to tell the media about it, right? That's the difference.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we were also a lot younger then too, and not so well versed on the internal Democratic Party politics, not realizing that a person like Obama, who came from such a great from Ivy League schools and was in the Senate and then was handpicked basically to run.
And was a community organizer.
Yeah. He had this great, other side to him. But once he entered the Senate and I think effectively was handpicked to be the next person in a way. I mean, he did run against Hillary Clinton and stuff, but in order to have that chance, you have to have certain internal Democratic Party backing, which we've seen play out with Bernie Sanders' 2 runs.
Exactly.
So
Obama was never going to be like rogue. You know what I mean? Like he was never going to be uncontrollable.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the difference. And so that's why at some point, like I think we become anti-capitalist in this work because we see that the system of our politics is broken because it is falling under capitalism. Like democracy or representative government is no longer the most important thing. It's only acceptable within the confines of, is capitalism okay with this? Right. So that becomes the problem.
Yeah, because this is a finance capitalist economic system. So these corporations are living off of interest rates basically,
and it's impacting our even though it's our economic system, it overbears like over our political system. It's overarching over our social system. Like it has become ingrained, and that's the part that bothers me. Is like we see each other as our value now, right? Like as our you put a dollar amount on somebody's forehead or something, and it's like that's how our social interactions are now, right? And so that's why, to me, what we're talking about is valuing things for beyond their dollar value. Like under capitalism, the Amazon rainforest has no value unless you cut it down and turn it into fuel, right? And start farming on that land.
Yeah, well now with carbon credits, carbon trading, Amazon can have value because you can trade squares of the Amazon as offsets for your coal mine. Right. So Joe Manchin probably loves that. But Carlos, is there anything else we should discuss about our national politics before we move on to move on going a little bit more local for the rest?
No, I think that we need to stay focused and understand that the Democratic Party has to make a choice. They have to make a decision, and based on what they decide to do, whether they're going to cave into one senator, they have to. They're going to pretty much sleep a bed that they have made for the future, because they're going to continue to look weak. That is the problem of the Democratic Party, that they haven't got what it takes to pretty much come out strong, and they fall apart at the last quarter, and they can talk the talk, run the ball to the final yard, and then give up the ball, drop the ball, and fumble. That's the problem of the Democratic Party. So if we have true leadership right now, they will force these votes one way or another. They get everybody in line. And Manchin, he has to go. Cinema, or whatever her
Kirsten,
name.
whatever her name is.
Kirsten Cinema. Yeah, whatever.
She needs to go as well.
Yeah.
Is that her? Yeah.
It's like these people are not going to be playing games. They should not be playing games with the people's agenda. It's dangerous. We are in the middle of the pandemic still, and we have nothing to show for it. We need these bills approved. We need to move forward. We need to show something for the people.
Yeah, if Biden wants to be reelected, he needs to get these 2 pieces of legislation passed if he wants to, and not just to be reelected, but for his legacy. I mean, to have his own party undermine his two signature bills, to me seems like a horrible legacy for him to have as a president. And I see him as somebody who cares about legacy more than anything else. So, okay, I guess we should move on to something else that's happening. Carlos,
let's talk about the mayor's race.
You want to talk about the mayor? Okay. So LA mayor. So we have two. All right, let me get that up here. So we have two. Oh, my mouse. There we go. Oops. Here we are. So we have two new big names who have just entered the race. We have Kevin De Leon and
city councilman.
Oops, that's not it. Okay.
Yes, he's city councilman Kevin De Leon.
Yeah, so Kevin De Leon and former House member Karen Bass have both decided to join in on the LA mayor's race.
She's still a member of Congress. Yeah.
Oh, she's still in, but she's leaving, isn't she? Does she have to leave, or can she run for the mayor?
She's running for mayor. She's running for mayor. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if she doesn't win the mayor's race, is she still going to stay?
She'll be okay.
Okay. So Karen Bass, she's still in the House, and then Kevin De Leon, he was in the California State Senate, and he is now running as well. So what are your thoughts on these two particular candidates and the overall race?
Well, for the progressives, it's going to be very interesting because pretty much when Karen Bass announced this past weekend, he threw everything on a spin for progressives. There's progressives that like Kevin De Leon. There are progressives that like Karen Bass. Karen Bass will be the first woman to serve as a mayor, African American, connected to Washington. She also connected to a lot of the labor movements. She's very, very well connected, well liked, respected. A lot of progressives like her. She has fought for important things on the issues that we care about. Kevin De Leon, same thing. He's got very strong connections in the state. He's served as a state senator. He's done a lot of things. He actually led the efforts on the environment here in California. He's been a strong environmentalist. So progressives like him because of that. He is serving right now at the City Council 14, which is Boyle Heights, El Sereno, parts of downtown. He's well liked. He's well connected to unions as well. So it's going to be, in my opinion, a race between them two if no one enters in. We have a cop-loving city councilman, Vizcaíno, that likes to use homeless people as a punching bag. Uses them, has no problem, saying things that pretty much favors the NIMBYs, those people that could care less what happens to the unhoused. My opinion that he represents the Republican, the Donald Trump mentality people. Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a very interesting race for progressives. And, there's a couple things that I think are at play here. One, Karen Bass is, people keep asking, why would she want to go from the seat she's at now to a mayor, right? It seems like a step down. But I'd like to also remind people that, Los Angeles is a global city. The mayor of Los Angeles is a global stage. Garcetti was first considered for transportation secretary and is now being elevated to the ambassador to India. Neither of which I agree with, right? Like I was at some of the protests in front of the mayor's mansion when he was being considered for the Secretary of Transportation. And I won't get into like 1,000 reasons why we didn't agree with him being elevated in that way. But the bottom line is, the mayor of a city like Los Angeles will launch someone's political career onto the national stage. And we do need a woman. We do need a non-white person to be mayor of this city in the next cycle. It's extraordinarily important that we have a progressive with true progressive values, because even though homelessness is exploding all across the country, every major city and many small towns now that never had homelessness before now are experiencing having a homeless population. And it's not one mayor's fault. It's not one city council person's fault. You can't blame Mike Bonin for everything that's happening in Venice. If I was homeless in Chicago, I would get on a bus to Venice too, right? Like, so I don't freeze to death, right? So we have to just like consider the fact that we have systemic problems that are resulting in different circumstances on the ground. And here in Los Angeles, we need someone in charge who is going to address those circumstances for what they are, and not try to paper over them and not try to put in temporary solutions that look good, to the cameras or things like that. When it comes to Kevin De Leon, he, in my opinion, he wants to be a progressive, but he needs to grow a bit of a backbone. There's been a couple of opportunities that he's had in the last couple of years to show the progressives that he means business and that he will stand with us and fight with us. By and large, he has declined to do that in a lot of ways. He has sort of declined to have relationships with the grassroots. One of the things that we need our progressive elected officials to do is be brave, be extraordinarily brave. And the community will stand with you. One of the senses I get from Kevin De Leon is that he's fearful. He's still towing the line. He's still walking in the middle, because he's afraid to turn his back on some of those powerful connections or big donors. One of the things that the progressive movement will continue to apply is the litmus test of where you get your money. That's a problem Kevin De Leon is going to have. So, I would encourage Kevin De Leon and those working for him and those handling him and advising him that he needs to start coming across braver. He needs to make some strong statements about his ideals and where he stands and what he's going to do to fight for the people. I haven't heard a stump speech yet, obviously, so we'll see where he starts landing on some of the key issues. But my experience with KDL is that he needs to put on his armor and his Teflon and start really standing with the community if he wants the community to stand with him.
Yeah, and to be fair, the same thing can be said about Karen Bass. She takes money from big corporations as well. She needs to be proven. She hasn't met with the grassroots. We are going to be requesting a meeting with her. I had an opportunity to talk to Kevin De Leon several times. I actually have been working in some ideas, and he's been, and I'm speaking for myself, he's been receptive. He has given me time to come and meet with him and to enter into discussions, which I think is healthy. We hope that Karen Bass will do the same thing, because we need to see where they're at. I am for having the first Latino or woman at city council, but that, we can have the first, Asian American mayor or woman or Latino, but if they are not in the right track, it means nothing. And that's what we need to understand. Same thing, we always wanted to have the first African American president. But what good does it do to have a Latino mayor or a woman mayor if they are not going to be siding with the people? We need to break our dependency on developers. We need to consider serious infrastructure when it comes to our climate change and the environment. We need real jobs in Los Angeles. We need to address the housing crisis. That, to me, should be colorblind. No matter what the color of your skin is, your gender, if you're a good candidate with good solutions, that's what we need to follow. Doesn't matter what title you want to put yourself in front of you.
That's why I say, if I can really quick, like, I think that part of what we're asking for, and I guess it's true, we can apply it across the board pretty much. Part of what we're asking for is bravery. Part of what we're asking for is, to make some of those difficult public statements, make some of those difficult legislative decisions that show the values of the future, right? Like, as a millennial, we often feel caught between like our boomer age parents and Gen Z coming up behind us, like, radically does not accept these conditions kind of thing, right? So as millennials, we get caught in this push and pull, and and millennials, don't forget, are in our mid to late 30s now, right? So this is like the core voting block that we're talking about. These are people that like are in KDL's age group kind of thing, and we can kind of go either way on some of these issues. But what's happening is that the young people that are coming up behind us, who, like, recently I worked with Youth Climate Strike, like, we have young people just flat not accepting these conditions. So as we move towards the future, we need people to be more brave, because one of two things can happen, especially in a city like Los Angeles. We can lose everybody and we'll be, electing our next mayor on like 11% voter turnout, or we can activate everybody. We can be inspiring, right? I want one of these. I'm like, I've gone a bit apolitical. You know what I mean? Like, I stay registered a Democrat to help our homies to do the ADEM stuff and all that stuff. But, I don't really like consider myself a Democrat anymore. So I need one of these candidates to really inspire me, so that I can help in the community that I work with, so that our community organizers can turn around and say, we feel comfortable putting our stamp of approval on this candidate or that candidate. Because as much as we don't want to necessarily get involved in politics, we might want to like focus on mutual aid, or just focus on our one issue, like healthcare for all or public banking, and only dip the toe in the politics where necessary. But the bottom line is, as goes Los Angeles, so goes California in many ways. And we know that California has the ability and consistently does lead the nation and the world in political, social, and economic change. So not to like put extra
pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all on like politicos and organizers in Los Angeles. But, I don't blame KDL or Karen Bass for, like positioning themselves, thinking about their next run for office. That kind of stuff, like it does matter, because when we do have good people in elected office, we want them to stay, right? This is why I'm trying to help. Me personally, I'll say, like, I'm trying to help Mike Bonin, right? Because nobody's perfect, but we can't lose the people we have. We can't lose the ground that we've made. So we want, when someone like Mike Bonin, who continues to stick his neck out for the people and continues to take abuse from people who don't agree with him, when he's on the line, we have to help, because we cannot go backwards. And so who is the candidate that is going to take this whole thing leaps and bounds forward? They have to show us that. And part of that, the big part of that is starting to be really freaking brave.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point, that somebody the person who is willing to show a little bit of fearlessness is the one that we need to consider. And absolutely, at a time right now where we are at a crossroads in terms of the direction we're going to go because of climate change, and also and even without climate change, the economic system that we have is also at a crossroads in which if the system doesn't change, it'll ultimately collapse under its unsustainable process. So we need people who are willing to be brave enough to see that we have to go in a different direction. I completely agree with you, Michelle. And I think that's probably what the progressive movement needs to really be focused on in the Los Angeles area, is putting that strategic pressure on. And it reminds me actually of what happened during the Great Depression with FDR. FDR himself, he was not this great progressive politician. He came from old money, from the East Coast. He was an insider in many ways, but he was somebody who was smart enough to know that if he didn't listen to his base, to the workers, to the unions, to the communists, that he would not be reelected. But because he did, he was reelected 4 times. And so we really need a politician who is willing to feel the pressure, but we also need a strong movement to put that pressure there too. So yes, go ahead.
Sorry. Part of what we lament, or what I personally lament, or what I see our people lamenting, is every time a major election comes up, like mayor or like governor, we don't have anyone. We don't have anyone to run. Right. So here we're stuck trying to decide between Karen Bass and Kevin De Leon. But as progressives and leftists, we actually don't have a candidate for us. Right. We're trying to make columns with the issues and put little check boxes. Right. And we're like, how many points for this? How many points? Kevin De Leon went to the border at Adelanto. He got 5 points for that. No, you know what I mean? What are we doing here? So part of, and I've had this discussion with Carlos for many times, part of what we need to be doing in between elections is cultivating our leaders. And that includes our political leaders. So part of what we do in the progressive movement is we poo-poo people who want to run for office, about their ego or about making it about themselves,
And that's not just the progressive movement. That's the whole left movement, where there's a constant struggle between whether we should be involved in electoral politics at all.
But when our good people or our solid people or people we know carry the values step up and say, okay, I'll do it. Don't forget, they're not just saying, hey, I'm going to put my face on a bunch of flyers and posters. They're also saying, I'm going to put a target on my back. Mm-hmm. They're also saying, I'm going to need your help. They're also saying, can you please guide me? Right? That's what a lot of our candidates need, is they need the guidance from the community. If one of our most trusted community organizers steps up and says, I'm going to run for office, and at their first volunteer event, they have 5 people and it's all their good friends, they're not going to win. We need to help each other.
Another thing it's important to know is that we have a lot of so-called progressives that run only when there is a seat open. Then after that, you don't see them again. And that's very noticeable. They have no roots in the community. They have done no work in the community, except maybe create a couple events here and there. That's not a base. Those are not roots. Those are opportunistic moments that leads you to nowhere. This is why a lot of our so-called progressive candidates never win, because we don't have built a base, and they are just living for the moment. When the race is over, bye, you don't see them again. So the only thing that you will see is selfies and things like this, nothing to do with the real movement of the people. This is why a lot of times I don't endorse a lot of these people that call themselves progressives, because it's a waste of time and energy when we have real candidates that we should be supporting.
So that's why I say we should be cultivating the leaders that we want, right? We need to identify the people in our community that we can lift up, or that we can, I wouldn't even call it lifting up. It's just a role to play, right? Some people are really good at logistics. Some people are really good at media. Some people are really good at the talking points and being on the microphone. And some people, it takes all of us. I'm not, as long as your North Star is in the right place for the justice of the people, I'm of the opinion there's no wrong way to go about your activism. So just find what inspires you. But if we have are good, solid people, the ones who are in community year round, day in, day out, the ones who continue to do the work, even when it's hard, even when it's not sexy, even when they find themselves mostly alone, they continue to persevere forward. And then they say, hey, you know what? Like, it's time for me to represent my community. We need the proper representation. I'm going to do it. These are the people that we need to step up, call them on the phone, tell them you support them, you know, allow them to ask you for advice, stuff like that. Because then again, like, this is how we find ourselves now in a situation where we have the mayoral race coming and we don't have a candidate, right? Like, there's names off the top of everybody's head of people that they would love to see run. Like, can we get together as a community and invite someone that we know would be good to run? What is the plan here? You know?
So Michelle, this is really a great point, because in Atlanta, for a while I was more active in the DSA chapter in previous years, and I was on the local elections committee, and we had a whole endorsement process in which candidates could come to the DSA chapter and they could fill out the form. We would review it, discuss it, and we could invite them for the general meeting and have everybody vote, hear them out and vote to endorse them. And then once they were endorsed, the local chapter would then be able to put a little bit of money towards that campaign to help them with phone banking and canvassing. And now what the electoral committee is doing is that they're actually running a DSA member for city council in the city of Atlanta. So they've been practicing over the last couple of years at this. They started out with basically being the only force on the ground for the Bernie Sanders campaign in Atlanta, aside from a few of us who were also working as victory captains directly with the campaign. DSA was the only one really out there doing the groundwork. So they got a lot of practice doing that. So what I think that what candidates don't also understand is that they need to go out into the community and meet with the different grassroots organizations and say, hey, I'm running. I believe in what you're doing, and I want my platform to represent what your organization represents. And I think that shows the organization that you're serious as a candidate and that I want your endorsement, not just because I want to put your logo on my flyers, but because I want to go out there and represent your message. And I need your help to represent your message too. And I think if candidates can be educated on that aspect of the campaign, there may be much more of a grassroots effort for them running when they run for these local offices. So we have to remember that it's not just the organizations, it's also the candidates who need to educate themselves. So something that just kind of came to mind to me in hearing you out is that there's called Run for Something. Now, Run for Something is definitely a very Democratic Party or nonprofit organization that tries to encourage people to run for office, in particular young people, millennials and younger, and people of color. But they have to sign a pledge that says they will run as a Democrat. And I think that's a little limiting. But what progressives could do, of course, somebody has to do this, right, is do like a Run for Something, local chapters where you're going out and seeking people and then handing them some basic information on this is what you need to do to run. This is how you can run a successful campaign. Here's how you can do it on a shoestring budget, right? Like we need that as well, and we don't have those resources, I think, for a lot of candidates who jump into the race. So everybody who does just sees Bernie Sanders' campaign and tries to model themselves after that, which is great. But, that's a big national campaign and there's a lot going on there. So trying to downscale that and get into the grassroots organization is something that they need to be educated on too. So
one of the first things that, and I think, and then I'll just stop my commentary on this topic because I'm watching the time, but one of the first red flags for us as former Bernie organizers is when somebody comes to us and says, can you do for us what you did for Bernie? We're like, oh, you already don't get it. So, it's like, can you come correct the way Bernie Sanders did or tried to in many ways, right? Can you start off on a different foot? And, we need to see those from people. We'll see. It'll be interesting. I'm happy to come back on in a couple months and see where we're at with the mayoral race.
Well, the problem is that we have lots of good people who don't want to run because they just,
that's what I mean.
It's toxic, right? It's a toxic environment.
We get 20 organizations to agree that like Carlos should run for mayor, and then we all write a letter and we present it, and we say, this is what we're willing to do. This is what 20 organizations are willing to do for one person that we've agreed we want to run. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we had that mobilization in place ahead of time, and then we present to the person the opportunity to tap into the community support because we've decided that you actually represent our values, right? Then that's a whole different ballgame than someone random or, one organizer or whatever deciding they're going to run and then trying to court all the organizations one by one. So it's just, I hope that at some point, progressive organizations who perhaps don't get along for whatever different reason can start to come together and say, hey, we need to deal with Los Angeles,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Carlos should run. And yeah.
As an example.
Carlos, as an example, Carlos. What do you do?
So
my work.
Carlos is in multiple meetings as usual, right?
Well, we can't. He's in an undisclosed location right now. Well, tell us. Let's see. While we're waiting for him to come back, why don't we talk a little bit about this union?
Yeah.
IATSE.
IATSE.
So let's go ahead and give us a little bit of a background on the union and what they're fighting right now.
Yeah, sure. So basically, and I'm not a member of IATSE. I'm not a filmmaker. But I have a lot of friends that are in film, as we all do here in Los Angeles. Most of us know people that are in film, and I have some friends in the union that asked for help with this. And so what's happening is, and for those who don't know, we can kind of describe briefly the conditions. The culture in Hollywood and on set is really like working people to the bone. People are working regularly 16, 18, and 20-hour days. Sometimes they don't break for lunch, and that's allowed because they'll just pay the fine for not breaking the crew for lunch, and they find that to be less expensive than tacking on the time at the end that's needed to treat the crew properly. And if you raise your voice about it, they'll just find someone else. They absolutely will. It's not a problem at all. And so there's like all these horrific stories of the consequences of that kind of culture, right? People who go years without ever spending real quality time with their children because they are getting home at 9 a.m., sleeping, and they're going back to a call time a couple hours later, or there's 4 hours between call time and they don't even go home. They just sleep in their car because you don't want to take the 45 minutes to drive home from set because that's sleep time that you could get, right? So there's all these, there's people that crash their cars. What we have in Los Angeles is sort of an epidemic of exhausted drivers because of this film culture. So think about camera crew, lighting crew, builders, painters, artists, prop people, right? Everybody who's not talent or above the line, like what's called above the line, like directors and producers, everybody else that makes your favorite content happen, these are the people that are being exhausted. And now they don't even get cycles off. That used to be, TV came in seasons. Now we have Netflix and Hulu. First of all, now there's no more seasons. It's constant, right? The content creation and content release is constant. And Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime and stuff are all still considered and treated as new media, even though a majority of new households don't have cable TV anymore, right? I personally have not had a cable TV connection in my home since I'm like 19 or 20 years old. It's been almost 20 years, right? So to call these things new media is egregious, and to treat people that are working on these projects as if we don't know the stability of this new media, so we can't pay you properly because it could tank at any time because it's experimental. I'm sorry, no, we're past that. And you start paying people what they're worth. And so, like I said, part of the consequence for this is that we have these crew members, hundreds and thousands of people driving around Los Angeles, overworked, and exhausted. And one of the things that we're trying to drive home is that film families deserve to flourish. Nobody deserves to drive home exhausted. Every single crew member should make it home every single night. And that's not what's happening. I encourage people to go on Instagram. I'm going to put it in the chat so you get it properly. But I encourage people to go on Instagram and look up what's called IA_stories. IATSE is the International Alliance of Theater and Stage Employees, IATSE. And the IA stories is all these crew members anonymously submitting their horrifying stories that they cannot put their names on. They cannot get up at a press conference and tell these stories to the media the way we wish they could, because it's not going to be, they're going to get blacklisted. Blacklisting is a real thing, right? So this IA stories account has allowed people to anonymously submit their stories of being overworked, even down to the dehumanizing things like PAs who don't get included in the lunch and coffee runs, PAs who wait until 10 o'clock at night hoping to get a leftover sandwich, and then the showrunner takes the sandwiches home to his family and the PAs never get anything. PAs who are asked to go and get coffee 3 times a day. No one ever asks them if they need a coffee. I mean, this is happening all the time. Right. And again, if you raise one little stink about working conditions or about your mental health or about your family, they will find someone else. So right now, what's happening is IATSE is the union. IATSE represents 375 locals representing all different disciplines of below the line filmmaking. And so this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, today is the last day, the union members are voting about whether or not to authorize a strike. Now, it doesn't mean they want to go on strike. What they want is to pressure the negotiations, right, to improve these conditions without having to go on strike. But if they have to strike, they will. Because, and again, for those of us in Los Angeles, we all know how, we all have friends and family. We all know someone we've seen work these grueling hours. We've seen our friends and family or our partner falling asleep at the wheel, falling asleep at their computer. And Hollywood has the culture of there is no not getting the job done. I don't care if you have 2.5 hours to build an entirely new set. You need to do it. You need to make it happen. And and no one wants to be the dreaded holdup, right? No one on a set wants to be the dreaded holdup, right? So everybody is in this constant mode of there is no not getting the job done. And I come from that world too. I come from a pressured built, event production, marketing. There's a lot of there is no not getting the job done culture. And that's part of what we're changing is that, yes, we're going to get the job done, but you can add a couple, 2 or 3 more weeks on the end of your production schedule of an entire season so that you can give the proper breaks so that crew members are not crashing their cars on the way home from lack of sleep. Because as we say, every single crew member deserves to make it home every single night.
And let me add a little bit to that. I have lived in Hollywood all my life. So I have a lot of people that work in the industry. And it is outrageous because the way these workers are treated, these are the lowest level paying jobs. We're not talking about the people that are making the big bucks. And they are being mistreated. They're being abused in every form of the way, form of the word. And we are in the middle of the pandemic. And again, they're putting their lives on the line. There's a lot of money being made. They need to be treated with dignity, with respect. They need to have a safe working environment, regardless of what the job title is. Everyone deserves this, every worker. And they need to have livable wages.
And so part of why this is so important is because this is a historic strike authorization vote. This is the first time in IATSE's history that it's voting to authorize a strike of this level. And it affects, as we know, right, in this particular case, when it comes to workers' rights, a rising tide really does lift all boats. If we improve the conditions for union filmmakers, it also improves the conditions and the culture for the non-union filmmakers. And it also will ripple effect to working conditions for other types of workers in other industries. So a crew struggle is a worker struggle, right? this crew struggle is a worker struggle. It affects all workers. And when we're able to, because non-union workers don't have an opportunity to negotiate on behalf of the collective, right? So when union workers are doing that, they're actually, even sometimes they don't see it because unions are in a bubble and they kind of like think about themselves and their own interests. But what happens is when the culture starts to change, it lifts that struggle for non-union workers as well, who don't have the privilege of collective bargaining in the same way. So what we're really talking about is like the dignity of film families. Most, or not most, but a lot of people in film is multi-generational. They're, you know, a production designer whose father was in transpo, whose grandfather was, or whose, you know, whose grandparent was an accountant, or this or that. Like film families, generational film families in Los Angeles are a thing. And what we need to do is make sure that we recognize the ripple effects. Film families deserve to flourish. You love your favorite TV show. You love waiting for the next installment of your favorite film series. Now is the time to show your love for also the people who create that content and show that we stand together as in worker solidarity. And so part of what you can do, if you're not in film, or you are in film but you're not an IATSE member, or you are an IATSE member and you didn't get in good standing in time to vote, which is happening to some people, part of what you can do is put this on your social media, right? That's why we encourage you to go to IA_stories on Instagram and read some of those stories. Save, you know, download, save those images of the screenshots and put them on your own social media and spread the word that today is the last day to vote. The IATSE members can still vote today in favor of the strike authorization. So we're encouraging everyone to put it on your social media to remind IATSE members to vote. Just because you are not a member doesn't mean that you don't have member friends on your social media, or all your filmmaking friends. Their reach reaches IATSE members as well. So this is our last day to get loud about this. We do expect the strike authorization to pass. And so we will continue to update you, and we'll bring on more people who are actually from the union to talk to you about what's going on next. But they are getting extremely loud about this, and with good reason, because this is a historic moment, a historic opportunity to change the culture on set in Hollywood, and it's needed.
Yeah, absolutely needed. Thank you so much, Michelle. We are running out of time, so we need to move on, unfortunately, to the last leg of the show. And that is that we must now say happy retirement to Carlos Maruquin. And Carlos, how long have you been working as a mailman?
Well, I have served as a letter carrier for the past 35 years with the U.S. Postal Service here in the city of Los Angeles. I have been delivering mail on the same route for 30 years over in the city of West Hollywood. I am grateful for the opportunity to have been able to raise my family, my 4 children, with the Postal Service. Lots of things that I learned. I represented the workers as a chief shop steward with our branch 24 of the letter carriers. So I'm closing this chapter of my life to move on to other adventures, other projects that we together have been working on. And pretty soon I'm going to be announcing a new job that I'm taking on that will impact pretty much a lot of people. So I'm very happy to announce my retirement for the post office, but I am not announcing my retirement from activism and from organizing. I will continue that. I will double down. I am ready to take it to the next level.
Well, Carlos, we are so very, very happy that you are now able to retire from your full-time job so that you can commit to your other full-time job of being an activist and an organizer and a leader in the community. and we really wish you all the best on this new leg of your career journey. And we are also very excited to be part of it too. And I'm so happy that I met you at Occupy when I did, and that you stood out to me as a shining star there. I was looking for people who were doing things, and you were that person. So I followed you around with my microphone and camera because you were doing such amazing work on foreclosures. And you're really a unique human being and an amazing person, and you deserve this retirement. Although I know you're not actually taking a vacation or anything, but at least.
Yeah, here's the fact: a lot of people didn't even know that I work for the post office. They thought
Yeah.
that I do my organizing as a full-time job. No, I held a regular job. I raised a family, and I have been an activist. And to celebrate that, I am asking everyone to help me convert a Yes We Can bus into a school mobile bus that will serve over at the U.S. Mexican border. I will put the link in there. Please donate something. We need to raise $15,000 to make it happen. This will be the third bus. Marco, do you have some of those pictures?
Yeah, I'm trying to bring it up right now. So just there we go.
Look at this bus. That's
get
one
it
of the
big.
finished buses. Once everything is completed, we have a wrap around the bus. Absolutely gorgeous. Look at that.
Yeah, it's amazing. This is great, Carlos. This is really, really wonderful.
So that's my retirement celebration, to be able to convert this bus and put it into service over at the U.S. Mexican border, specifically to help migrant children.
All right, so you're going to do a fundraiser for
Yes,
it?
there's GoFundMe. I'm sending the link
Okay.
so that I can, so that you can help me raise the funds.
All right, so we'll be talking more about this, I think, on future shows as well, as we will try to continually fundraise for this. So please remember to our audience that this fundraiser is also in honor of Carlos's retirement and now his engagement full-time as an activist and an organizer. So please, as you're visiting the Bernie Sanders Brigade page and keeping up on Carlos's Facebook page, that keep an eye out for this fundraiser that's ongoing so that we can get another bus for the Yes We Can Foundation so that migrant children can get an education, even though they are in the process of migrating from one country to another. Michelle, please say a few words before we sign off.
Yes, thank you. I'm so honored to be a guest today on the show where you're announcing Carlos's retirement. When I first met Carlos, we met in the beginning of the Bernie Sanders 2016 organizing movement here in Los Angeles, and he had me come and meet him. I think we met at Pink's in Hollywood, and we just chatted for a little while about what was going on with each of our organizing. Carlos is the type to, when he sees somebody doing some moving and shaking, he'll reach out and make the connection and develop a relationship. That is what he did. I was just going to say, the day I met him for lunch that day, he was in his postal uniform. And that's the day that I realized that he was a letter carrier, which I thought was extraordinary. And, that's also how, he lifts up so many of the people, the organizers that he sees. And Estefania Rebelon, the founder of Yes We Can, is one of those people that he saw the spark in her work and the dedication and commitment and the results of her work. And so, it doesn't surprise me that he's chosen his retirement, fundraiser to support Estefania's work and the Yes We Can School on Wheels, which has been such a difference for so many migrant children so far, and will continue to do so as she continues to grow. I myself have been a beneficiary of mentorship and friendship from Carlos. And I know that part of his fight, just from talking to him through the years, is that he knows that he had a good job with the post office, a good solid job that he could raise a family on, that came with benefits, that came with a retirement, that came with a union that you could get involved with. And, those are the things that don't really exist for a lot of us anymore. And so, it's a blessing to have Carlos in community with us, because he takes the 30,000 foot view so often of understanding, even that privilege, Carlos comes from an immigrant family, and, he's a military vet, and, there's so many different layers of the lives that we live. Right. But one of the things that's really not available to us anymore is those good privileged, good quality union jobs. And I know that when Carlos engages in the struggle for workers' rights now in 2021, he's looking at his life and saying, where could I have been if I didn't have that good, solid union job to raise my family with? And we deserve that for the future too. So I know that it's all intertwined as one when we live our lives in the movement and in this work. So I just want to say thank you. And I know that, Carlos is stepping into the next chapter of his life, and it's going to be big and beautiful. And we're lucky to be here with him. So thank you, Carlos, for everything you have done and everything you will continue to do.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Carlos, for doing all the hard work that you've done. You're just amazing, really, really amazing. And you brought us all together too. And you don't let us disappear for too long either. So I just want to make that clear. He drags us back into it, me in particular. So
Love you guys. Appreciate you.
So we have to go. We are over time, and I have some dogs to take to the groomer. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This has been just an amazing show. Thank you to our special guest co-host, Michelle Manos, for joining us today, and especially at the last moment. We really appreciate you doing that. And thank you to our viewers, of course, for being with us every Sunday morning here at Stand Up Fight Back, where we discuss strategy and analysis for the progressive movement. We simulcast on Facebook Live on the Bernie Sanders Brigade page, and also on YouTube at Insight Out News. So please remember to share us with your friends, subscribe, hit the follow button, and remember that we are here every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we will continue to have amazing, interesting guests and fantastic discussions about the progressive movement, about climate change, and more. And Carlos, was there something else? Oh, the Rose Parade. One last thing. So the topic of the Rose Parade float, I guess, will be climate change.
Really briefly, we're going to be having a traditional People's Rose Parade March. We're going to be announcing the theme this coming week. This week, we're going to be announcing that. We're very excited. You're going to love it. We have great plans. Michelle will be partnering with me in that endeavor. We're going to have a great event coming January the 1st. Save the date.
Yep. So tune in for that. Thank you again. We have to go. So please remember, if you haven't been vaccinated, get fully vaccinated, and please continue to wear masks indoors, or we can get through this pandemic if we all still work together. All right. We'll see you again next week. I'm Margot Pius. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Have a great week, everyone. Take care.